Hello and welcome to Provoking Tech. I'm Zach, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Lexip mouse, which has the potential to completely revolutionize how we interact with our computers via the mouse. So if you're a 3D designer, whether that's in a CAD program or a program for 3D modeling such as Maya or Blender, you've probably have heard of and possibly even use a 3D mouse. The Lexip mouse is kind of the infusion of a traditional 3D mouse with a gaming mouse to make a all-in-one device that is actually really slick looking and could really change how people both work but also how we game. So without further delay, let's go ahead and jump right to it. So as I mentioned in the introduction, the Lexip mouse is essentially a blend between a 3D mouse and a traditional gaming mouse. So the gaming mouse portion is a little bit easier to explain as it has a lot of the features of a regular old gaming mouse, such as the ability to change your DPI, which is useful for scenarios such as like if you're in a FPS and you're trying to snipe, you can turn your DPI down so that your mouse movements are less sensitive and you can have a little bit more control over the placement of your crosshairs. Or you can turn your DPI up if you're in a high action game and need to be able to quickly move your mouse from side to side of your screen. The 3D mouse portion of the Lexip mouse is a little bit harder to explain and might be a little bit harder to understand if you've never used a 3D mouse, or definitely if you've never even heard of a 3D mouse before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to an alternative screen and pull up my Autodesk Inventor application. So this is a 3D CAD application that has the ability to use solid models. I use that for like 3D printing, but it also has sheet metal tools. And I have pulled up a case that I've been tinkering around with and have been considering making that's inspired by Minecraft. So with the model, I'm going to show around the model by using the 3D mouse and kind of explain how the 3D mouse works. So there's a little knob on top of this mouse that has a big heavy base. The big heavy base is so that the mouse itself does not move while you're interacting with the knob. The knob doesn't turn like a traditional potentiometer. It has a bunch of sensors in there though that can interpret your movements and the forces that you push onto the knob to move the object around in 3D space. So I'm going to try to hold this up and demonstrate it while you can see the model in the background. This is going to be a little bit unnatural because I'm used to having it down in front of me. So as I'm demonstrating and talking about how it works, it might move a little bit, other than the direction I'm trying to move it, simply because I'm not holding it in a natural position. And this is quite heavy, so I'm going to try to hold it at the same time. But just to demonstrate, you can move or pull slightly up on the knob to move the model up in 3D space, or push down slightly to move the model down in 3D space. This is very sensitive, and you can control that a little bit in the settings, but it's very sensitive. It doesn't require a lot of force. As you can see here, I'm not really pushing a lot of force down to move that up or down. You can do the same for left to right to move the object in 3D space. Beyond that, you can also twist and turn and rotate to rotate the object in different ways. So you can rotate it just by twisting slightly to the left or the right to rotate it along your X or Z axis, depending on your 3D software, or you can rotate it towards you or away from you to rotate it in that axis. And of course, your axis is going to change a little bit as you rotate the object around, but you can kind of see how it works. I can pull the knob towards me slightly to zoom in, and I could push the knob slightly away to zoom out. You can see here that I'm not putting a lot of forces on the knob to navigate the object in 3D space. And it is a little unnatural controlling it with it way up in the air, not in the natural state. But you kind of got an idea of how a 3D mouse works from that demonstration. Now that I've showcased how a 3D mouse works, I'm ready to move on and discuss the features of the Lexip mouse and why I think it is such an interesting device. Hopefully my demonstration will give you some insight into where I'm coming from when I say that the Lexip mouse could very well be revolutionary in terms of how we interact with our computers using our mouse. So the Lexip mouse has a couple of very unique features that kind of make it stand out and kind of be in its own category in terms of input devices. It adds 4 axes of control that you wouldn't have with a traditional mouse. Those are the ability to rotate the mouse itself because it kind of sits on a platform, not too dissimilar from how the Space Navigator works, but you can rotate the mouse as a whole kind of forward a little bit, back, and left to right to give you 2 axes of control using the mouse itself and the ability to rotate it. In addition, there's also a joystick that adds 2 more axes of control by ability to move the joystick forward, back, and up and down. And that joystick is located in your thumb, and there is a left-hand variant so that you're not forced to use your offhand if you want to use this very interesting device. So I have 3 different strong use cases or scenarios in terms of using the Lexip mouse that I wanted to talk about. I'm going to break these off into 3 distinct segments so that I don't convolute the message that I'm trying to get across, and hopefully keep things as concise as possible. So the first segment and first scenario is the 3D professional users, and I wanted to begin with this one simply because I've already been talking about the Space Navigator. So with the Space Navigator, you have a 6-DoF controller. So when you're considering moving to the Lexip mouse, you will be losing and giving up 2 degrees of control or 2 degrees of freedom. So that right there might be a showstopper and might, automatically put a stop to any ideas of using the Lexip mouse. However, I do see a couple benefits even when considering losing a couple axes of control. The first of which is as a new user to a 3D mouse, especially or even when you turn down the speed and sensitivity, your mouse movements have to be very minute, and you can't be overly zealous or overly aggressive with your mouse movements. So it's very easy as you're first learning to try to nudge the knob to the left to try to pan your object left across your screen. It's very easy to accidentally rotate it ever so slightly and cause the object to start rotating in addition to panning, which could completely negate what you're trying to do originally with the 3D mouse, which is to improve your efficiency of 3D design by being able to control the object more precisely and easier in 3D space. This isn't as issue once you've used the mouse for a while. As you start to learn and kind of learn how to quote unquote baby the mouse, you don't have to be super sensitive, but you do have to learn that you have very minute movements do a lot, even when turning down the speed in the settings. So that's more of a thing, like the learning curve is somewhat steep. Once you get over that though, it's pretty flat terrain after that initial learning curve. The second point I wanted to talk about is definitely a first world problem, but I'm always having to take my offhand between my 3D mouse and my keyboard when I'm designing either a 3D sketch or doing an assembly of multiple different parts to constrain those different parts to each other to form the assembly. That might just happen to be typing in a simple numerical number, such as like 12 inches apart, or entering a simple equation with my keyboard, so I'm constantly have to move my hands back and forth. I do know that 3D Connection does make higher end models. This is like a $110 mouse that I have, I believe. If I remember correctly, there is a roughly $300 model that has additional keys that I could use as a numpad, for instance. And there is an even higher end model that's in between the $500 and $600 range that would kind of solve most of the issues that I have, but that's really high-end devices and quite a bit more expensive than the Space Navigator that I have now. And I wanted to do a kind of one-to-one comparison, and it's not really fair to compare a $300 3D mouse to a $130-ish mouse that the Lexip Pro will be, especially if you get it on Kickstarter. I think it's 130, 135, somewhere around there. Once you translate between pounds to or euros, whatever it's in, to US dollars. So with that in mind, it's kind of a toss-up, and without actually getting my hands on the device, which I have backed and I will be reviewing it once it comes in, but until I actually have used it, I don't know if the Lexip mouse will be like a supplement to my 3D mouse, or if it could potentially replace it for most of my use cases. That's not something I can say until I actually have my hands on and tested the device. But it is a very intriguing, at least, in terms of being a mouse for 3D professionals. All right, so it's time to kick back and relax for a bit as we talk about the gaming use case for the Lexip mouse. So this video is actually inspired from a video that Jay's 2 Cents did about a week ago on the Lexip Pro, which is the original version that is now discontinued of the Lexip mouse that is now on Kickstarter. So in that video, he did a quick demonstration with Flight Simulator X, showcasing how it could be used with flight simulator type games. And I think this just goes to show that the usability, or whether the Lexip mouse will enhance your gameplay experience, will fluctuate quite heavily from game to game, depending on how you plan on using it and if it'll actually make the gameplay experience better or not. So for like flight simulator type games, I definitely believe it has a strong use case, and same theory could be applied to space sims such as Elite Dangerous or Star Citizen, with the ability to control your spacecraft by simply tilting your mouse. FPS type games, depending on the game, it could possibly be useful. For example, more tactical type games that are a little bit slower paced, I could see it definitely being useful. For example, the ability to tilt your mouse left to right could be used in games like PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds to tilt or to look around a tree or a rock as you're trying to snipe an enemy in the distance. In addition, the joystick not only functions as a more traditional joystick, but also functions as 4 independent buttons. So you could attach either primary weapons or equipment to those buttons, so you can quickly and very easily switch between different weapons in an FPS type game. Another genre I can see that would benefit very heavily from this mouse is RTS or strategy games in general. Generally, in strategy games, you have huge maps that you're navigating across, and a lot of times if you have to move to the other side of the map, you can go to the mini-map and click on it to quickly navigate, but sometimes you might just need to move slightly, and you have to move your mouse all the way to the edge of the screen so you can start moving in that direction, either using the tilt functionality of the mouse to move in the 4 different directions, or the joystick. You could very easily and very quickly navigate across the map, possibly with strategy games, assuming that they will support the functionality of the Lexip mouse. So that could be very interesting, and especially could be hugely impactful for strategy type games. So there's a couple of different examples of gaming, and of course, once I get my hands on the mouse, I will definitely start testing it and throwing a couple videos up, kind of sharing my experience with a couple of different game genres. So if you have any requests for different games, leave those in the comments below, and I'll make sure to keep notes for when I receive my device in a couple months. Final point I wanted to talk about does have a little bit of overlap with the previous 2 points, but that is the Lexip mouse's usability for people with handicaps. Since there is a lot more functionality in a single device, people that are restricted to gaming or generally using a computer with one hand might benefit from the Lexip mouse, simply because it does have so much more added functionality. I'm not sure if this will be 100% the case, but if you know someone that does have a disability that means they can only use one hand, or possibly only have one hand, or maybe they don't have fine motor control in one of their hands due to an injury or something along those lines, I'd be interested into hearing their thoughts and whether they think that the Lexip mouse might be beneficial or not. If you do know somebody, maybe share the link to the Kickstarter to them and get their feedback, and leave the comments below on what they think, if it might be beneficial or not for people with disabilities or impairment that restricts their gaming or computer usage to primarily a single hand. So that's pretty much it for the different use cases and scenarios that I wanted to cover for today's video. Alright, so that's pretty much it for today's video, guys. The Lexip mouse is definitely very interesting and intriguing. I've already backed it. I'm definitely interested, and I hope everything goes as planned with the Kickstarter. And hopefully, if all goes as planned, I'll have my mouse in 3 to 4 months, and I'll be able to start making some follow-up videos and actually testing some of the theories that I shared in today's videos. I'll have a link below in the description for this Kickstarter if you're interested in checking it out. If you are and you check it out, leave any comments or thoughts you had on this in the comments below. If you liked this video and found it useful or otherwise entertaining, give it a big like. I greatly appreciate that, guys. Also, if you're not already an existing subscriber, what are you doing? Go ahead and smash that subscribe button and hit that bell icon at the same time to stay tuned for more great videos from Provoking Tech. Until next time, Zach out.